Officially 2 o'clock, so I will go ahead and get us started. I'd like to welcome everyone to our webinar today. We're excited that you could join us. We are recording our session, and thank you for joining us. To save bandwidth for our attendees and to make the recording a little bit easier, we ask everyone to either turn their cameras off and mute themselves during the presentation. I will be monitoring the chat so I can share your questions with our presenter. Jenny Latios is running tech for us today. Thank you so much, Jenny. As I said, we're recording this session. Alice will share a follow-up email in a few days with the recording link. If you are uncomfortable with your name showing, you can change your name to anonymous and then private message Jenny for our attendance. Or if your Zoom name, it doesn't match the name you registered with, please change your name or let Jenny know. I'm gonna go ahead and do our land acknowledgement. Texas Children in Nature Network is headquartered in Austin, and as such, I'm on the ancestral and unceded land of the Tonkawa, Comanche, and Sauna people. Our ongoing colonial presence on Indigenous lands compels us to take action now to counteract the effects of colonization. The work we do through the Texas Children in Nature Network is one small step towards that effort. I'm going to put a few links in the chat in just a moment with some information about land acknowledgements and those people groups. And I'd like to go ahead and welcome our speaker today. Fiona Wyrtzen has created a great documentary that she's going to be sharing with us today. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to her. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, everybody. My name is Fiona Wyrtzen. Today, I'm going to be sharing my documentary project in this webinar called DisabiliTree, Finding Ways to Integrate Nature and Accessibility. So the purpose of this documentary is to open up the conversation about accessibility in nature. So the way today is going to work is I'm going to introduce myself and the process of my documentary. And then we're going to watch a little bit of it to lead to some discussion, and then we'll have some Q&A. So my name is Fiona Wyrtzen. I'm from Austin. I'm currently a student at the University of Texas at Austin, and I'm a second-year environmental science major. I'm an alum of the Youth Forest Council, which is an immersive year-long paid internship with the city of Austin to give youth a chance to explore careers and contribute to the communities in Austin. I did it, I was in the 2021 cohort, so I was in the internship from the January 21 to December of 21. Right now, I'm working in the Climate Leaders Program at UT, and I'm working on greenhouse gas emission reduction proposals. So that's where I'm at today. So as a part of my internship, we created a community action project. And the goal of this project was to give interns an opportunity to sort of take their own direction and how they want to approach a community engagement project. Ours was coming out of COVID, so we were encouraged to do a project that was, could it be digital or interactive in person? Mine ended up being pretty digital. And we were given pretty much no direction, just a lot of guidance. So when I was brainstorming this project, we started around May or even earlier, and then it was due in October. So it was about a year ago that I was ending my process. I really started to think about the impact of trees in my life, and my attention sort of turned towards my sister. My sister has a genetic disorder called Rett syndrome, and my entire life I observed her trying to access nature, sometimes struggling with it, sometimes adapting with it. And I noticed that the conversation around disability in nature was missing from a lot of nature-based spaces. So I really wanted to look into that experience and do something like that with my project, but I really wasn't sure how to approach it. So I did a lot of interviewing with city officials, people working in inclusivity and access throughout the city of Austin. And I determined that for my project, I wanted to take a more narrative-based approach and identify individuals in Austin who were accessing nature, and sort of just tell their stories. So I ended up with a documentary and a story map, which a story map is sort of a guided, it guides you through a map. So it's different locations on a map. It's through GIS. And then I've embedded my documentary into that story map. So I have interviewed 5 individuals that are a part of my entire documentary. And you can explore the locations of each person where I interviewed them as you go down like the story map. I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys that story map. Just a second. And then they're also sending a link in the chat. So this is the story map. As you can see, it has the full film here. I want to make sure you guys can see it. Can I get a thumbs up?
Yes, we got it. Okay,
awesome. You can see the full film here, and as you scroll down the map, it takes you through each story and gives you a little bit of information about each individual. So this is a map of Austin, and as you scroll through, it shows you the location of where I interviewed them. So basically, each person had a different way of accessing nature in a different place in Austin, and I wanted to show the experience of each person on an individual level. I want to start, before I share this documentary, I want to acknowledge that I'm not a member of the disabled community, and this documentary, including the individuals in it, do not in any way represent the perspective of the entire disabled community. I know there's a pretty common phrase that's come from the community called "nothing about us without us," which has been used by other like social justice groups. And I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind. It was something I kept in mind throughout the whole process, and I was very concerned about doing this project because I really didn't want to speak over anyone. Historically, the disabled community has been spoken for instead of given the chance to speak for themselves. So I really wanted to make sure that this project was a platform and not a exploitative documentary. And then I also want to acknowledge that 4 of my participants are nonverbal, so they are having somebody else speak for them within the project, which of course is not ideal, but we sort of adapted each interview to how that person communicates, which I think is really cool to see. And then 3 of them don't have a communication device either, so that's when you're going to see a parent or guardian speaking for them. And then I also wanted to say that I am not a professional filmmaker, and sometimes the audio or video quality is not the best, so you guys can hang in there. Hopefully the idea gets across. Before I start the documentary, I wanted to send out a Jamboard in the chat. If anyone isn't familiar with Jamboard, it is a place where you can sort of collaboratively post comments. So if everybody wants to just check that out, let us know if it's not working for anyone. Throughout the process of the documentary, if you have any thoughts or questions that you come up that you might want to ask later, I want you guys to put it there, because the purpose of my documentary is to really inspire and start a conversation. So I want those conversations to be started while you guys are watching the video. So feel free to add any thoughts there, anything that came up that you have not thought of before or anything like that. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to play each segment one by one, and I'll talk a little bit before. So the structure of this is I've split it up into 5 individuals. If you go to this link, you could find the whole film combined together, but through the story map, you sort of see the individuals individually. So the first one is actually my sister. Her name is Blythe. She also lives in Austin, which is where my family lives. She has Rett syndrome, like I said earlier, and her brain and body don't communicate very well. And we're gonna go with her to Mayfield Park. Can you guys hear?
Fiona, I don't think we've got
I can
the,
pause it real quick. Can you hear it?
no.
Okay, let me fix it. My computer got logged out of.
No problem.
And we are going
Got it?
Yep.
Okay, awesome.
to Mayfield Park.
Before being able to enjoy the park, Blythe and her dad must find accessible parking so she can easily enter and exit the vehicle.
This is Blythe Wyrtzen. She's 19 years old and she has Rett syndrome.
Blythe usually uses a wheelchair, but she also has the ability to walk. Today she will be walking without her wheelchair so she can enjoy the trail. This is not always possible, but today she has the energy for it.
Trails are hard sometimes for Blythe to access because of her stability. Right now we're not in her most stable shoes, but this pathway is fairly doable.
Most outdoor trails are left as natural as possible and cannot be paved. This often means that they are not accessible. Natural elements like roots and rocks can stick up from the ground, making it hard for someone to walk and nearly impossible for a wheelchair. Blythe's father must support her at all times so she doesn't fall or trip over these features.
So what is that belt that you are holding on to?
This is a gait belt, so it provides stability, allows me to hold onto her, prevent falls if she loses her balance.
Blythe is nonverbal and uses a communication device. However, she is unable to bring it on the trail without her wheelchair and must rely on other forms of communication.
Yes, she uses her computer to mainly talk, and then sometimes she communicates with her mouth. She a lot of times communicates with her eyes by giving you looks or asking her questions, and she'll say yes by looking at you or no by looking away. Do you like going hiking? I guess not, huh?
It can be difficult to figure out what Blythe is trying to tell us, but after spending so much time with her, we have a pretty good idea. There are not always resources or guides on trail accessibility. Sometimes the provided maps can be difficult to understand from the accessibility standpoint.
How often are y'all able to hike? And do you have easy access near your house?
Well, we're right now only about less than a 10-minute drive from our house. And we have access to multiple places to hike within 10 to 15 minutes.
Blythe was able to go on the loop of the trail, but there are still some places she cannot access. There was a conveniently placed bench by a beautiful tree, and Blythe was able to sit and enjoy the nature.
On another day, we brought her wheelchair and her communication device to see how she would navigate the park.
How's it going? Pretty good. Pretty good.
You good?
Pretty good. Hi.
Hi.
My name is Blythe. I live in Austin, Texas. I go to school at McCallum High School. I am in the 18+ program.
The trail was rocky and pretty hard to navigate in a wheelchair. We had to give up very fast.
Yeah, this one's not very accessible, huh, Blythe? It's a wheelchair. Yeah, it's not gonna work, huh?
There is a gated and paved portion of the park that we were able to navigate pretty easily as Blythe could be pushed on smooth ground. Thankfully, in this part of the park, we were surrounded by beautiful trees that Blythe could look at without having to go on the bumpy trail with her wheelchair.
I like. My favorite thing to do is.
Is that your favorite thing to do? Is your favorite thing to do go outside? Yeah.
I love
Okay, so that was Blythe's story. That was the first interview that I did. It was very special to me because she's my sister. If anyone is from Austin, they might have been to Mayfield Park before, and you might not have thought about that aspect of the park. I really like Blythe's interview because we got to go back when she had a wheelchair versus when she didn't. My sister is able to walk, but as you may have seen, it's definitely a lot harder for her and she needs assistance. So she was able to do some of those harder trails with assistance from my dad, but once she came in with the wheelchair, she really wasn't able to access those trails. And my sister can't really use her communication device, her computer that you saw in the end, without her wheelchair. So we kind of have to pick between giving her a voice and letting her do her own thing. So she definitely has different restrictions on her freedom depending on what type of day we want. And something that I've noticed with my family is it definitely takes a lot of extra effort from my dad and from me or my brother, either when we come with the wheelchair and we have to get it out, put it back in, make sure everything's okay, or if we don't, because sometimes we have to pass her along. So it's definitely an interesting way to look at accessing nature, and my sister is able to do both with and without a wheelchair, but there's different obstacles. I'm gonna go ahead and...
We've got a question in the chat.
Sorry, guys.
Melody asked, did you assess which trails in Austin were better suited with people with limited physical mobility during the course of this project?
That's a great question. That is something I considered doing in my original development of the project, but there is actually already resources for that. I'll show you guys, it's linked here at the bottom. So there is a Parks and Recreation trail directory, and it has information on if trails are accessible. It wasn't really feasible for me, and I don't have the professional experience to evaluate each trail in Austin, and it has also already been done. So if you see here, they have difficulty rating and if it's ADA accessible and the length. There definitely could be more robust resources on this. And at the end, I'll show you guys a resource from Oregon that has really good information on trail accessibility. But so this resource already existed, and I determined that for my project, it would be a little bit out of my scope. So I decided to take a more narrative approach, but you guys can totally go check this this information out if you're interested. And then, was there another question?
I was just gonna say, Melody had a follow-up. She works for Austin Parks and Rec, and she said they have a new ADA staff member and would be great to connect them with you since the data in that form is from 2013.
Okay, that would be great.
Yeah.
I also do not have access to edit this project right now because it was through the city, and I'm now out of the circuit, so it would be great to get into contact with me and them and update it. So yes, my data is out of date, which would be great to get a new resource for that. The next one we're gonna watch is Matthew. So Matthew is 25. He lives in South Austin. He has autism and he lost his sight due to being born prematurely. Today he's gonna go on a hike with his sister and mom in Circle C Park. And then this one has, the audio on this one is a little bit rough, so pay attention to those closed captions, and I'm sorry for any residual noise. I did not have a professional audio person.
Hello, I'm Gwen Davis, and I am Matthew's mother, and Alicia is his sister. Matthew was born prematurely, and he lost his sight as a result of the prematurity, and he has autism. We live in the Hillcrest subdivision Matthew is now 25 years old.
Matthew, his favorite thing to do is just to come out and walk on the trails. Sometimes we just like to sit and listen. I think it's probably his favorite thing to do is to walk the trails and just sit and listen and just be in it. I think when he's out, especially when he feels the openness, is when he feels like the most freedom. You know, he doesn't look for assistance when he's walking. He always gets a big smile. I want to tell him you live your best life when you're out in nature. And if it weren't so hot, you'd stay out here forever. We have minimal experience with trees because they aren't on the trails. We appreciate the shade. Because that's usually where we take our breaks. So I don't think we think about it, but I think they're important for how we move around, you know, out in nature, where we need the shade, we need the, you know, the shelter or whatever. Unfortunately, sometimes they clear out the trees and then put in the trails.
Oh, wow.
To me, that doesn't make any sense. It's more harmful than helpful. There's probably in this area right here, bud, there's probably like 50 trees. And they're all like really small. I want you to see like how small they are. You see how small that is? There's like 50 of these in here. And all of them together made the shade. They're a bunch in a cluster and they, come here, let's see. But they're kind of drying out because summer's over. I want you to see it. It's skinny. Come. No, can you feel that? You see it? It's got little berries on it. And this is where all of our shade came from. We go hike, like actual hiking at McKinney Roughs. That's where we do most of our like hiking. They have a variety of trails. They do have some like ADA dedicated trails. They're always really short and not challenging. But they offer a variety of other trails too that that are maintained enough that we can, you know, navigate the trail. McKinney Rough, that place is easy, fun, hard to negotiate because it's actual nature that hasn't been manipulated too much by man. But just because it's hard to get around doesn't mean it's bad. It just means we have to learn a different way to, you know, negotiate rocks or whatever. We've gone up to 5 miles, but you know, because of the heat, we can't be crazy about it. So I usually keep it like in a 2 to 3 mile. That's like a comfortable, and a lot of trails accommodate that too for different abilities. So that's really helpful. I do look at the trails. I do look up the trails, and I do look at what other people have to say, especially about like maintenance, because that will affect how we'll be able to enjoy the trail. So yeah, I do extra like homework before we go, but sometimes we just need extra space. The trail needs to be wide enough to accommodate at least 2 people. But probably our biggest obstacles would be just trail markings, finding the trails and being able to stay on the trails. They're always visual, but they're hard to find even if you have vision. Yeah, I think some kind of tactile marker that was like kind of universal, because you know, he's not the only visually impaired hiker out there. So some kind of tactile universal marker. Having like specific ADA areas like out in nature is great, but they don't always have to be short, and they don't always have to be like, I want to say easy. He can try to do anything that he wants to try, you know. It doesn't matter what his ability or disability is. Like, he's got feet, so why can't he hike? You know, groups of people should never be an afterthought. We're all a community of human beings. So just because you might not see a blind person or a person in a wheelchair doesn't mean that they don't exist. Because we're not separate people. We're still part of this community, this society. You know, I think just don't assume that one type of disability is the same. Hiking and nature should accommodate everybody to the way they want to encounter it, and don't just assume that people with disabilities just want something smooth and easy, and they don't want it put in their laps either. We want to go to it just like everybody else does, and we want to experience it like as authentically and as natural, you know, as everybody else does.
Well, I think more than anything, I just want people to know that, you know, we're out here. We like to do things. We like to do the same things that everybody else does. But sometimes it's just not easy to do it.
Yep.
Because we haven't been thought of. Can you say thank you? Can you tell her thank you? High five?
High five.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that was Matthew's story. Matthew's story was amazing. I think out of all the interviews I had, I got the most active feedback, which I thought was great. My biggest takeaways from his interview that I think a lot of people don't think about is that people want to be able to access nature, but it doesn't always need to be easy. There was that quote that his sister said, it doesn't have to be easy, and it's even nice for it to be hard. Like, for instance, my sister, the same thing. It kind of was fun for her to be able to bounce around in her wheelchair. I also saw in the chat there was a question if she's able to walk without her gait belt. She is, but she's very unstable and really likely to fall, so we rarely let her walk without her gait belt, and that's my sister. So yeah, Matthew was able to explore the trees as well. And my internship was focused on trees, so that was essential for the documentary. Trees are also something that we don't really think about when we're interacting with nature. I think a lot of us appreciate them, but we don't realize the role they play. And I thought what they were talking about the shade was super important, because nature isn't accessible in Austin, Texas, if there's no shade, and the trees are a really important source of shade. I thought it was really cool that she was able to show him the trees and they were able to interact together. That component of interacting with nature is very inherent in what nature is. It's super interactive. So I love seeing people access nature in the ways that are kind of catered towards them. Next, we're gonna watch Jennifer's story. Let me pause it. And then, as you can kind of see on the map, it shows you the location in Austin. So Jennifer and Matthew were around the same area. So Jennifer is 21 years old. She has a clinical diagnosis of cerebral palsy and atypical Rett syndrome. That was also the same thing that my sister had. And we're going to be exploring Jennifer's neighborhood and taking a walk in her front yard.
Hi there, my name's Elizabeth and this is Jennifer Plank. Jen is 21 years old. She has the diagnosis of CP and also atypical Rett syndrome, but since she's gotten older, it's a clinical diagnosis, and it seems like she's sort of different from that now. And she used to have seizures, but she hasn't had those in years. And we live in South Austin in Circle C. Do you enjoy being in nature? Yes. Outside? Yes. Or no? That's a yes.
All right.
Is it hard getting outside because of your wheelchair? Yes. Or no? I think she's not sure. We don't get out much because it's hard with the wheelchair and she gets hot. Do you like trees? Yes? Or you're not sure? Yes.
Yes.
She likes trees. You like sitting under a tree in the shade? Yes. Or not sure? Yes, she does.
Yeah.
That's one really good thing that we love about trees is the shade. So I'm sure she would like going outside more if there were adapted places, you know, just set up for shaded and ease. Yeah, accessible trails would be great because with the wheelchair, rocks are really hard. We get her sunglasses on. She's very sensitive to the sun. And we put sunscreen on, right? And we make sure she's had her water and she's hydrated and dry, right? Is that what we do? And Jen says, let's go.
All right, so where do you guys usually go if you walk around?
We usually walk around the block.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
Hi! Hey!
Nice looking up.
Yeah!
Little bumps. She doesn't mind the bumps.
Yeah.
Kind of likes them.
Are there any obstacles that you guys, like the cracks?
Yeah, the cracks.
Yeah.
They did just recently fix the big ones though, because they were horrible. If I was pushing her fast and hit a big crack, and you know the chair lunges forward. We really like cicadas at night and grasshoppers. Do you want to see them? It's called a firebush, I think. Hey. Those flowers.
Flowers?
I think right now she's really feeling what it feels like on her hand.
Yeah.
Feels good, doesn't it? For you.
Pretty pink flower.
Bright pink. Let's try going barefoot in the grass. Her feet are pretty sensitive. We change surfaces.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's put your feet in the grass and the little crunchy leaves. Yeah, that's a lot of sensations in your feet. And basically, like if I shift, then she'll lift up a leg.
Okay.
Yeah, so we sort of, it's a together process. A little nature walk in the front yard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of crunchy, huh?
Yeah.
Kind of soft and kind of crunchy. Yeah, that's nice candy.
Yeah.
We were talking about how we like the shade. Yeah. These give us such nice shade. She used to love crunching sounds. You do like it.
You like it.
Here, here's another one. Crunch, 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 crunch. She loves that sensation against her mouth.
Yeah.
That's a little pokey,
Yeah.
a little scratchy. Yeah. Like a dried out branch. You're just feeling everything.
Yeah.
She says that's a lot of sensation on my body.
Yeah.
Uh-huh, I know it is. Did I do that?
Yeah.
Let's see if we can take those off. See if you can. It's okay, right? You want to hold the bark? Got a handful. Got a handful of stuff.
Yep.
There we've got green soft leaves.
Ooh.
Soft. And then we got a crunchy one.
Yeah.
Crunchy leaf. And the soft leaves. Soft. Which one do you like better? Which one do you like feeling better? You like the crunchy.
Crunchy.
Yeah, she likes the crunchy. She likes crunching sounds. She always has.
Okay, so that was Jen's story. Jen was able to go in her wheelchair and take a little ride around her neighborhood. As you saw when they were leaving, they had to be very cautious about the sun. Thankfully, they live in a neighborhood with lots of trees, but she had to put on her sunscreen and her hat. And something that her mom commented is it's just really difficult for them to get outside just because of all the prep works it takes. The days are super hot for most of the year in Austin. So actually getting outside can be pretty difficult for both of them. And then she was able to walk in the grass, which was great. Her mom sort of knew the activities that she could do, which I think speaks to how each individual is very unique and has different capacities and different things that they want to do as well. Like, it's very hard to generalize like accessing nature to one or a couple of things. I thought it was great how she was able to interact with those leaves with her mom and like have that tactile feeling. Matthew also was able to do that when he was touching the trees. I see there's a comment asking if Matthew has a communication aid. So I met Matthew and Jen actually through my sister's speech therapist, and her speech therapist helps her with her communication device, which was a computer. And I talked to Jen and Matthew about this, but they had both tried that same type of communication device before. And I think for them, it just didn't exactly click, as well as for my sister. She's been using it for a really long time. And so like Jen had tried it, but her mom and her kind of have the way of communicating, like you guys saw. The same thing with my dad in the portion where he asked my sister, and she kind of communicates with her eyes. So thankfully for my sister, she's able to use that device, but for Matthew and Jen, I think they just didn't exactly find that to be the route that helps them the most. And then, as I said before, even if they do use those devices, it's really difficult to take them out in nature. So sometimes you have to choose between nature and your voice. We're gonna watch one more. This one is about, and then here's a link to McKinney Ruff's Nature Park, which Matthew talked about. And our last one's gonna be Ben from Highland Hills. He's a 9th grader with cerebral palsy. He has a service dog named Friday. And he's gonna be going around his neighborhood in West Austin with his dog.
Hello, my name is Ben. I am in 9th grade and I have cerebral palsy. My cerebral palsy is mitigated by Friday, who is a service dog. She's 2 years old and she is amazing. I go to Alum High School. Nice high school, but it's very inaccessible. Doors aren't accessible, and there's still stairs to get down to the courtyard. Only some courtyards have ramps, which is what I'm supposedly going to work on with my teacher assistant, and I hope to go to med school.
So what's your favorite part of nature?
The greenness, and I like the cold weather, seeing all those beautiful leaves when or if the leaves change color. I think the fresh air helps my mind, and somewhere for me to just veg out. My least favorite thing about trees is probably cedar pine.
What do you like to do when you come outside?
Exercise my Friday. We do most of our training out here. Friday. Settle. Friday watch. Parenting with Friday. I have more drive to go outside. I've just started taking her independent by using a walkie-talkie that my brother and has the other walkie-talkie.
What's the hardest thing that you face when you try to access nature?
When I was a little kid in elementary school, I would try to drive my chair on the sidewalks. And just FYI, this was all pre-Friday. My elementary school is close to Perry Park, and they made it inaccessible with wood chips.
What's the second one, other than concrete, that's easy for you to drive on?
Asphalt. So like our roads. I wish there was some more accessible parks, like Playfurl Park down in Round Rock. Good girl. So good. She's very treat motivated. Sit. Wait. Get. Good girl. So good. Being outside is like social time for me. It's kind of hard on me because I constantly have to look where I'm going and look at Friday. My mark is going to probably be accessibility. One of the things I've noticed is they don't treat me like a human being. They treat me like an object. So even when I'm asking them to hold the doors, they just shut the door. So have you seen those push button doors?
Yes.
I would like to get some of that installed. Friday can push it with her nose. I'm a normal person. I I shouldn't be treated to some of the same privileges.
Okay, so that was Ben. And at the end there, I think he meant to say I should be treated to some of the same privileges. So Ben's story, I think, is really interesting because his service dog, Friday, changed his entire interaction with nature. I don't know if you guys caught it, but he had a really hard time getting outside before. And he also said that he was able to go outside completely and like by himself independently by talking on the walkie-talkie with his brother. But he went outside with Friday, which I think was amazing to see. My sister as well tried to get a service dog. It does not always work out, and Friday was amazing. Yeah, so Ben was able to access nature with his dog, which was an accessibility tool. You guys didn't see it as much, but there was like a portion with the neighbor. I thought that was really great that you could see that he does it a lot and he knows his neighbors. It's kind of like a social time, is what he said. We don't have as much time to watch it, but there is one more. It's Spencer's story. You guys want to check that out by yourself. It's similar. He's going around his neighborhood. And then I see there's a comment about Play for All Park. I think that was right before he said it. I went to Play for All Park. Just for context, it's a accessible park at Walnut Creek Metro. It's awesome. I went there for some of my research, and my sister has also been there. It's great. So I want to. Oh, sorry, guys.
My name is Ben. I am in.
Want to leave some time for some questions. Let me see. And then just my biggest takeaways from this entire project is that each person is going to access nature differently. There's no default way to access nature for anyone, but especially for individuals with disability. Accessible does not mean easy. People want a challenge. It doesn't always have to be exactly easy or smooth or free of trees or anything like that. There was a lot of solutions that the participants mentioned, like wider sidewalks, maybe like a trail guide in the form of like a rope or something like that, elimination of bumps. There was a lot in there. And then something else that wasn't brought up a ton, but I want to bring attention to is that it's kind of difficult sometimes to determine how to make things accessible, especially when making them accessible may get in the way of the nature. So it is a difficult concept to figure out how to make nature accessible without destroying the nature. And that's a pretty big area because how do you make things, preserve things while still making them accessible? Is there any questions in the chat? And then I'm also going to go check out the Jamboard to see if anyone's been posting on that. And feel free to make comments.
I think you've gotten all the questions in the chat so far.
Okay. You guys can feel free to ask more questions as well. And then I also want to note that the scope of my project was pretty limited. I was only able to interview 5 individuals. And I think it would be a really cool project to expand on one day, but I was missing a lot of perspectives in my documentary. I wanted to let the narratives speak for themselves. But I really wish I could get more participants and get a wider variety of perspectives. Will this be available to view at a later date? Yes. If you keep that link, it'll take you to it. If you Google DisabiliTree, that's D-I-S-A-B-I-L-I, sorry. I'm just gonna write it down. I have some issues with words, but it's DisabiliTree instead of disability. And then, yes, they're also going to be posting the recording. And thank you guys for the comments. I love hearing feedback.
Do you have a question here from Eileen? She asked, how did you reach out to families or identify who to interview?
Yeah, so that was actually a pretty difficult part of my process. Just accessing communities can be very difficult. I reached out to a lot of people in my sister's community. Like I said, I found a lot of people through her speech therapist. So that kind of created a web of people who had similar experiences with communication. I contacted a couple of different organizations in Austin. It was definitely difficult, as I know, in a family with a person with a disability. Most people are pretty busy and don't have a lot of time, so it was difficult to like get responses. And in the future, if I did the project again, I would definitely want to widen that scope. But it was mostly through like connections that I could make sort of through my own web, which has its own limitations. So yeah, that's basically how I found participants. And then someone asked, what is the name of the class I am taking? Was it a requirement to focus on the population's experience outdoors, or did you choose this subject? So this was a part of an internship with the city of Austin where I did a personal project. So it was outside of like school. And the requirements of the project was it had to engage the Austin community in some way with trees. There's a couple different goals from the Urban Forest Division, and mine focused on inspiring and informing. But there was no, I kind of got to choose a community and the subject, so it was very open. And there's a question, if there are spaces that are universally accessible, but these spaces are in another part of the metro area, is that prohibitive? That's a great question, and that's very important in Austin. I only got 5 interviews, so I was not able to cover the entirety of Austin. As most of you know, there is a huge difference in tree cover, especially in East, or some of you may not know this, but there is a difference in the tree cover. There's a lot more in West Austin than there is in East Austin. And because I was focusing more on the narratives, I wasn't able to look at the overall accessibility of the parks, but I think that would be a really interesting concept to pursue. Yeah, I love, you guys are welcome to use these links. I'm gonna put my email in the chat. I like prefer if you're doing something more official with it, please reach out to me about it so I can just know. But you guys are welcome to like share these links, share them with any professional circles. Let me see if there's any other questions. And thank you guys for the feedback. I'm gonna look at the Jam board real quick. There's some comments. There is a comment that says the lack of information on a website could deter families or groups from wanting to visit. I'm going to guess that's about a park. I think that's a really good point. Oh, I was going to share with you guys as well. This is Disabled Hikers. It's a website that has access to disabled information on trails and accessibility in Oregon, and I got a lot of my inspiration from this project too, so that's a really cool thing to check out. It would be great to have something like that for Austin. I see more people are commenting on the Jamboard. It would be awesome to replicate this approach in other communities to raise awareness and foster inclusive approaches. I agree. I think this sort of narrative-based exploration of these experiences is awesome. It's difficult to maneuver different surfaces. Yes. Also, parking spots, even if they are handicapped, are not often placed in the most accessible spots, or there are not enough handicapped spaces. This is a comment on the Jamboard. That's really true. They may not be accessible in terms of closeness to where people are trying to access. I also noted that Ben had an issue with the park that he was going to because they changed to wood chips and he couldn't access it with his wheelchair. And I think that's a really important aspect of it, because I know a lot of playgrounds will change to like softer surfaces, but they might not consider that that may not be accessible. Is there any last minute questions or concerns?
I have a question for you, Fiona. I know you said that you're currently a student at UT. Do you see this project influencing maybe what you decide you want to kind of focus on through your university work?
Yeah, so this project was a great starting point for me, and this internship sort of launched me into the environmental field. It definitely started a positionality for me. I really want to focus on environmental justice in all forms, and I think particularly environmental justice for accessibility is a concept that isn't often brought up. So I'm definitely trying to push for those conversations in the spaces I'm in at UT and in my future career. So I think it's a really good starting point for me. So I've definitely seen it reflecting on my university experience. I know there's a push to make trail information accessible on trailheads by noting terrain, elevation, length. I hope this becomes a mainstream option. That's what Christopher said. I totally agree. I'm going to try to update that information on my website, hopefully. But yes, that would be super helpful because there's not always resources available for that. And those resources also need to be accessible. Okay, it looks like we're just about time. Is there any last questions?
I don't see any in the chat. Thank you so much, Fiona, for your wonderful presentation. Really appreciate it. I do have a couple of links in the chat if y'all could help us out in filling out our evaluation. We do look at those and it helps us choose our next webinars, and then we give feedback to Fiona as well. She had a couple of questions that she wanted us to add to that evaluation to help her as well. And then we have our summit in December. Early bird registration ends on Saturday, so make sure you get registered before early bird ends. And lastly, our next webinar is actually this Saturday. It's with the Link Project, and we're going to be looking at the importance of recess through the healing properties of unstructured outdoor play. So register for that if you are able to. But thank you so much, Fiona, for your time. We really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for coming today. Yes, Amy, it will be recorded. Everyone who's registered will get the recording, and then it'll be up on our YouTube channel in a week or so. Thank you everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day.